Delighted to see you all to this first Baroness Barker's book club. We're having a go. I think that given that you are both now demob happy, no longer shackled by being members of the madhouse that I work in, I'm going to let you introduce yourselves and kick us off. So, Paula, first, you don't do.
Hello, lovely to see you both. And I'm Paula Sherriff. So in a former life, I was the MP for Dewsbury, Labour MP for Dewsbury. And yes, I lost my seat in the difficult election of 2019.
Oh, but lovely to see you now.
Great to see you too.
Robert Buckland, sir, please.
Hello. Yeah, Robert Buckland, former Conservative MP for South Swindon until the recent, very difficult 2024 election. And I was, whilst I was in Parliament, a minister for many years, Solicitor General, Prisons Minister, then Lord Chancellor, and then Secretary of State for Wales. And then most latterly, I chaired the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee in the Commons, amongst other things.
Brilliant. So this is the inaugural Baroness Barker's book club. Robert clearly got the memo because he's sitting there with all the books in the background, which we can all have a good nose at. I, by the way, win the backdrop, best backdrop competition.
Absolutely, you certainly do, Liz. That's impressive.
I do. It is. It absolutely is. So here we are. First subject matter that we had to go for is the presidential election, because we're at that period that happens every 4 years in Britain, where we are sitting, watching the news, listening to the Today programme, and we're all keeping up the pretense that we are absolutely, completely focused on what is happening in Britain. But the truth is, we've all got a half an eye on what's happening across the pond. Not that we can actually technically do anything about it, notwithstanding the nonsense that came out of the Trump campaign this week. But you two are veterans. Who knows, you may be swimming your way across the pond to help this week, is for all I know. But I'd like you to talk about this election and how you see it at the moment. So, well, let's start with Robert. As a conservative. Well, what do you think?
Well, I'm holding my mini NBA baseball at the moment, so I'm giving myself stress counseling because I think this is a knife edge election now. I think the advantage had lain with the Harris-Walz campaign in September when I was last out on the East Coast. I think there was a sense of momentum for the Democrats, and people were feeling very upbeat because of the move in the polls that was showing that she was leading in most of the battleground states. I detect that there's been a narrowing. Some of the polls are suggesting that Trump is ahead in most of the battleground states.
Why do you think that's happened, Robert?
I think it's tightened because, let's put aside our own preferences. Let's say you're an average American voter. You're going to be thinking about domestic events and the economy. And in particular, you're going to think that, am I better off now than I was 4 or 5 years ago? Is the cost of living really making my wage go much less far than it used to? And I think that for many Americans, that is the case. And with Trump, there is this sort of persona, whatever one thinks about it. I have a view about it. I think everybody knows my view, which is unfavourable to him. But the persona is that he knows about business, that the economy was doing pretty well when he was in charge last, and therefore he'll offer better times to come. But I do think there's a big divide between men and women as well. And I think women are very motivated to vote in this election because of the women's rights and the abortion rights issue. I was just looking at some figures today that suggest in early voting, women lead men by over 1 million votes thus far, which suggests that might augur well for the Democrats, but it depends on where the votes come. And these rural counties in western Pennsylvania and northern Georgia and even places like Arizona are going to matter more than anywhere else in the country in this election. And that's why I'm worried that as we wake up on the morning of the 6th of November, we still won't have a result. And I think that is a real possibility now.
Yeah,
It's one of
too,
the
Robert, yeah.
it is one of the great side benefits of an American election that you end up caring about places that you never knew where they were. I mean, I've never been to Saginaw County, Michigan, and I doubt I ever will. But for a moment, it's going to have my undivided attention to see which way they go. Paula, as a lefty, I think you'd be pleased to be called that.
A very proud one, yes.
Very proud of it, yeah, absolutely. And a woman, your take.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. First of all, it's great to see you both. You're both looking great. And it is particularly refreshing to be on a podcast where I'm on the same side as Robert. So, yeah.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think, I'm sure you'll come on to this in a moment, but I think Robert and I are going to be in the States for the election, albeit at different coasts. So I remember watching in 2020, and I've long taken an interest in US politics. And in 2020, I was actually undergoing cancer treatment, so I couldn't physically be there. And I remember watching the TV and saying, right, next election, I'm going to be there, come what may. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, hasn't it? Let's be honest, because there was all the concern about Biden, you know, there are lots of questions about whether he has capacity and whether he was the right man, whether he was too old, all of those things. And then it suddenly, you know, there was so much speculation for weeks, and then suddenly Biden put this statement out. I think it was on a Sunday evening, and of course, it was evident straight away that Kamala was almost certainly going to be the candidate. It seemed like the other possible contenders sort of dropped out pretty quickly. I'm really concerned, like you say, the reporting, the reports from. I'm watching sort of a mixture of news channels, trying to get some of the US news channels as well, and it's clear that at the moment it appears like Trump is having a late surge in the polls. Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting. I'm hoping to go to I'll be flying to New York, but I'm hoping to go down to Pennsylvania, mobility pending. I'm not quite as agile as I used to be, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, obviously the way the American system works with the Electoral College is fascinating. Whoever gets to, is it 270 is the magic number? Really interesting watching something last night on, I think it was on Sky News over here, and they were likening a place in Pennsylvania called Erie to Swindon, Robert. And they were saying that was the Erie's the Swindon, like the essentially the
I've been there. I've been to Erie, Pennsylvania.
There you go. That's the swing, and they were saying that Erie almost always goes the right way. You know, that so whoever they elect in that county transpires to be president. But like Robert says, I was also watching something yesterday, and it said that the result might not be known for days. And I'm not sure my nerves will be able to take that. You know, it's that kind of, at least in this country, you know, for all the rights and wrongs with our electoral system, and I know there are many. I mean, I personally favour first past the post, although I accept it's not.
Okay, let's not go there. You were doing so well. You were doing so well, Paula.
But for all the wrongs and rights in our electoral system, at least we know kind of pretty much, you know, within a few hours of those polls closing, we kind of know, and it's very rarely wrong in well, I don't think it's ever been wrong in terms of the governing party. So yeah, I'm really concerned. I'm not just concerned for America, but like I'm sure many people, I'm concerned for what impact a potential further Trump presidency would have globally. You know, looking at things like NATO, looking at women's rights. I mean, I'm a great advocate for women's rights, as you both probably know, and yeah, really, really concerned, and just the message that it sends. You know, if Trump's re-elected, you know, he's a convicted criminal. He's you know, lots and lots of allegations about his inappropriate behaviour, to say the least. And this man could be the leader of the free world.
It was that great Atlanticist Winston Churchill who said that the Americans will always do the right thing, but only after they've tried everything else first. And there's an awful lot of that, I feel, going on. My next question, you're both going to go to different places. Why those places? What are you expecting to see? And then we're going to very quickly go on to talk about books, which is our main reason for being here. So Robert, you know, where are you going?
Of course, Liz, and I'm going to the West Coast. I'm going to San Francisco, and it's not a flying visit for me. And I'm going to be there for quite a while because it's been a long planned visit as I pursue my fellowship. I've got a senior fellowship at Harvard at the moment, which I'm working on, particularly with regard to the impact of AI and machine technology on the ethics of justice. So I'm going to go meet the tech firms. I'm going to talk to them and see at first hand some of the work that they're doing, and in particular from an ethical point of view, what that means, not just in terms of justice, but more generally. But I will be in San Francisco for the election, which is of course the heartland, if you like, the homeland of Kamala Harris. She was of course a California senator before she was vice president, and as we famously know, was a prosecutor in California as well. I mean, California is in many ways emblematic of my own position. You know, for years staunchly Republican. It voted for Ronald Reagan, of course, was a Californian governor. George H.W. Bush won election from California, but it has swung away from the Republicans because what has happened is that the likes of Donald Trump have been the cuckoo in the nest, and they've come in and colonized a party that otherwise used to be, well, whether you agreed with it or not, was a more internationalist, outward looking, free trade, free enterprise party than the protectionist, rather isolationist approach that Trump and the MAGA crowd take. So I think it'll be an interesting place to be. It'll be a very civilized time for me, of course, because I'm 3 hours behind the East Coast, and I'll be seeing those first results coming in the very late afternoon before we know finally what's happening out west, in particular in Nevada and Arizona, which are the two states to watch at my end of the country.
I was out in California in 1996, which, as you know, was not a cliffhanger.
No.
And therefore, the thing to do was to look at all the local issues and propositions. And two I particularly loved. One was the lawyers who were against frivolous lawsuits. I mean, really. And the other one was the people who were campaigning for medical use of cannabis. I have to say that none of them looked that ill to me, but there you go. It was California. Paula, where are you going and why?
So I'm going to Pennsylvania because merely due to its proximity to travel from New York. So we're actually flying to New York. I'm actually going out there with a Tory councillor, believe it or not, who is also backing Harris, which is great. Formerly, he was a big Trump fan, but thankfully has had an epiphany and seen the light. So Pennsylvania, I don't know really what to expect, if I'm honest. I just love being caught up in election fever. I love a good committee room. I can't wait to see how they do it in the US. I'm just hoping I could be useful, whatever I do, whether it's making tea, doing emails, or knocking on doors. I just hope that, you know, I
must admit, I was in New York when Obama stood, and specifically with my friend in Harlem, and the Obama campaign in Harlem was one lone bloke with a suitcase, because anybody with any clout was off in Pennsylvania making a difference.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we did think about staying and doing something in New York, but no. I mean, it's a blue state, so I'd rather go somewhere. It's like Target, what you do around here, isn't it? You go to your Target, you swing seats, your Target seats.
Okay. So on to the real issue. I mean, if we were talking films about American politics, that would be really, really interesting. But we're not. But I only. What are your suggestions for books that would help people here to get their head around this election? Robert, you're going to start.
Well, look, I think that getting a sort of real sort of sense of American politics and the development of American politics, probably a good place to start, you know, is the book that we now know it was written by Joe Klein, the journalist and columnist, Primary Colours, which of course was anonymous at the time it was written. It was written back in the sort of late Clinton era, and it was a very, you know, entertaining and a very genuine account of the process by which it takes a person to become the nominee, as I think the anoraks, that's us three, I'm afraid, know. The primary
Speak for yourself.
although the primary season in the last couple of elections has become rather dull, frankly. I think it's a very good illustration of, the steps that have to be taken, the long, hard road that is taken, and shall we say some of the compromises that are made by candidates in order to secure their particular party's nomination. So that's where I'd start. I'm a great student of US political history, and I think anybody who really wants to understand the presidency and also how Congress, and in particular the Senate, works, has to read the as yet incomplete Robert Caro.
Oh, bingo! Thank you. I wish I'd put that in. I wish I had put that in a sealed envelope before we started. I knew one of you was going to say that.
You have to read, particularly Volume 3, Masters of the Senate, which.
Oh, really? Not Volume 2. Not Volume 2. The 1948 Texas Senate race.
I love that one. I love it. But for me, Masters of the Senate, that first 200 to 300 pages of the history of the Senate is just unputdownable in my book. So I love Caro. And then finally, I'm going to pray in the wonderful, wonderful Doris Kearns Goodwin, who has written so many superb books. I mean, I could name No Ordinary Time, the great 1940 story about Eleanor Roosevelt's important involvement in, that election and the war. I would say Team of Rivals is probably one of the greatest political biographies ever written. I think it's not just a study of, arguably the greatest of all the presidents, Abraham Lincoln, but how to run a cabinet with conspicuously able members who all think they can do the job better than you, but who realise that actually...
Are you talking from experience, Robert?
Yeah, actually. And I can tell you one person
cruel, Paula, cruel.
One person in particular who will remain nameless was advised very strongly by me to read Team of Rivals, but to see that they didn't. So those are my top 3 really, but loads more on my shelf groaning behind me. I've got so many FDR biographies I don't know where to begin, but that's a good start, hopefully.
That is a very impressive bookshelf, Robert, and I'm sort of in the process of I do have some bookshelves, but setting up others at the moment. But I'd love to come and have a ratch in your bookshelves if that doesn't sound rude.
Right up to the ceiling. They don't stop.
Wow.
I'm getting bookshelf envy now.
That's really impressive. Yeah, absolutely. I went to my friend's in Barnsley the other night, and she's recently moved house, and she's got really impressive bookshelves. And I mean, she had a lovely house, but I had total bookshelf envy. So the books that I've chosen, Liz, I've come from a slightly different direction from Robert, so to speak. So these are books that I actually have that I've ordered and that have arrived, but haven't read yet. So I'm hoping I'll certainly be taking one of them with me. I like to read on the plane. I'm a very, very quick reader as well. So the first one is by a journalist that I really enjoy, John Sopel, and it is called If Only They Didn't Speak English, Notes from Trump's America. So I'm really looking forward to that. I kind of think in hindsight, maybe I should have got a Kindle version, but I've got the actual, I don't know about, fantastic. Oh my goodness.
John's done a good job. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah. Have you read it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. But I don't know about you, Robert and Liz, but I really enjoy the physicality of having a book in my hand.
Yeah.
I know people talk about, ebooks, and I get the convenience that you can just take your phone or your Kindle or whatever. But I love the smell of a book. I love how a screen is I'm an avid reader, always have been since I was extraordinarily young to learn to read, and to this day, rarely kind of don't have a book on the go. And the other one is it's a book by Theodore Grant, and it's just called The US Election 2024 Inside the Battle for America's Soul with Trump and Harris. And that just kind of grabbed me when I was looking a while ago. I was looking for books around this, and I just like the idea of grabbing the soul. So yes, I haven't read either, so unfortunately I can't actually provide a review, but looking forward to reading them both, and probably others.
You've teed me up very nicely, both of you. When I was at university, a long, long time ago, and a bloke called John Sopel was running around being union president wearing stripy trousers. I was a psychology student, and I did organizational psychology as my specialist subject, and we had a lecturer who lectured both us and business students together. And one day he set us a textbook to read, which I still have, which is by a bloke called Kets de Vries, who's a Dutch psychologist. And what he'd done was he had applied psychoanalytic theory to organizations. Stay with me at this point. And what he had done in it was he had set out two profiles of entrepreneurs, psychological profile of an entrepreneur who's likely to be successful and one who's likely to fail. And the year that the time we were doing it was the week that Freddie Laker's SkyTrain had gone down. So 1982, if you remember, American connection there. And he started to read out this profile, and there was a woman in the class who was a very, very good family friend of the Laker family. And she would say, oh, yes. And then she would say, what was the next bit of the profile? Can I just tell you that the psychological profile of an entrepreneur who would fail, you should go and read. I sent it to John Sopel when he was our man in Washington. I said, I think you'd find this very helpful. So if you can get hold of that one, I would do that.
Oh.
The other couple that I would recommend, bit off bin, and I'm indebted to my friend Jacob Holk, who lives in Minnesota. He's a proud Minnesotan. There is a writer called Sinclair Lewis, who was the first American novelist ever to win the Nobel Prize, and he wrote novels. The first novel that he wrote was called Main Street, and it's a study of Sauk Center in Minnesota, a very small town. Portrait of small town America. But in 1935, he wrote a book, a dystopian fantasy book called It Can't Happen Here. And it's about a fascist takeover of America. Not suggesting you read it with any particular candidate in mind. And I would probably advise that you don't read it until after the election result is over. But it's a real good, it's a really good, I think a good. And on going back to Eleanor Roosevelt, Blanche Wiesen-Cook, her 3-volume biography of Eleanor Roosevelt, if you want as much words for your money as you get with Robert Caro, that's quite interesting too.
I mean, there's a big question about this election, isn't there? I mean, whether Trump, should he be defeated, and I think we all probably hope he will be, but will he accept the results?
That's the first question that somebody has put in the chat.
Oh right, okay.
So mind reading, Paula. So what do you think? You go first, and then Robert.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think he won't, and I just I hope that we don't have any repeat of the insurrection that we saw was it January the 6th?
Yeah.
When the and that's a really quite frightening thought. So I'm inclined to think that he's so kind of narcissistic. Well, he appears to be, and so
well, go back to reading that profile, kiddo.
Yeah, so I'm inclined to think that he may well not accept the result, and we may see a repeat of the same. There was fraud, there was this, there was that, and I kind of wonder if that's already starting to, if he's starting to develop that narrative based on this thing of the stupid things like, the UK are sending Labour activists over and blah blah blah, and I just wonder.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Robert?
Yeah, well, look, I think there's a real danger, and I'll tell you why. Because already over 100 preventative or preemptive lawsuits have been filed by lawyers instructed by various arms of the Republican Party. Now, I think on both sides, they are, from my contacts in the legal political world in America, people are tooling up and getting ready for challenges, and I'm getting that through the the National Association of Federal Attorneys, or United States Attorneys, which is a big organisation that covers current attorneys and from administrations going right back to Kennedy Johnson. So I think this might be the legal challenge to end all legal challenges. I think if you look at the last result, which was a very clear plurality of 6 million or so for the Democrats, Trump was the incumbent and he was deeply unhappy and challenged it then. My worry is that this election, which I don't think we will see such a plurality on either side, will inevitably mean that he will start to question the results. And therefore, I think that Paul is right. I think it's going to be a very bumpy road, and it might make what happened in 2000, which we all remember, the famous Florida hanging Chad election, look like a picnic. Because if you remember in 2000, Al Gore conceded that election. And so you could end up in a position where one of the contenders is not conceding, and you've got a lot of legal challenge, and that's a recipe for real uncertainty through the transition period, at a time when the US really needs to be sending a signal to the world that all is stable.
Absolutely.
And I'm worried about everything from the markets right through to the political stability of the West. So this is why we're greatly nervous about November the 5th.
What do you plan to do on the 5th, Robert? Sorry, Liz. I should go through you as the chair, but I just wondered what's your plan? Are you knocking on doors? Are you doing
I'm going to be, look, I haven't decided yet. I will probably be more of an observer, I think, as we get to the election itself. I have been door knocking. I was door knocking in September, and I've been to the campaign set offices and the things that you're going to do. I think that where I am, it's probably going to be more of an observer role, but I will be talking to a lot of business people and businesses based, and particularly a lot of UK linked businesses as well, to get a flavour from them about what the economic outlook is if we have a really contested election. Let's not forget we've got the Senate to be decided, which looks as if it's probably going to more or less stay as it is, that the Republicans might actually edge it because the Democrats are having to defend more seats. In the House, it may well be that whatever happens at the top of the ticket, the Democrats win. So you're going to have a very, very fractured Washington. And either person getting the presidency is going to really struggle, I think, in a political system that is predicated upon that cross-party, cross-the-aisle cooperation, but which increasingly we've seen less and less of in the last few years, resulting in real paralysis on the Hill. And so we mustn't forget that aspect of US politics as well.
But I mean, go back to my Winston Churchill, they always do the right thing in the end. It might take them a long time to get there, but they do. And if there's one other period of an American history that we all go to all the time, that's Watergate. I mean, it took them forever to do the right thing, but they did. And I have sort of interesting thought. I mean, the fact that there's lawyers tooling up to sort of fight this one out, well, that that's no surprise, is it? But actually, I do have some faith that they will eventually come to the right. Even in their very, very divided, politicized state that they're in at the moment.
Would this be his last presidency? Because you're only allowed to run. So is it 2 consecutive or 2 terms in total?
It will be the last one he can run.
Right.
So in effect, he's got 2 years of real authority before he becomes a lame duck. So he'll be aware of that, which makes things even more unpredictable. I mean, I suppose the good news is that the Constitution is there to protect against a president who goes wrong. As much as it is to enable a chief executive to do things. So we have that, hopefully that safeguard. Though I'm worried the Supreme Court's decision recently to confer an immunity on office holders, which meant that the Southern District of New York indictment changed to Trump the candidate, not Trump the president, I thought was an extraordinary departure from the norm and not at all in accordance with how I understand the principles to be applied in the US Constitution. Immunity has not existed here.
But he stuffed the Supreme Court with his own
quite.
Well,
people. So
yeah, look, I mean, I think that's right. They're clearly there because of a perceived political preference. I do think that sometimes it's more nuanced than that. But and John Roberts, the current Chief Justice, I think has shown that. But you're right. The court has definitely taken a more conservative move right. But I have to say, just knowing the deep history of the Supreme Court, I can trace it right back to when Ted Kennedy and the Democrats blocked some very distinguished candidates who were seen as too Republican, and what happens with you had a counter reaction to that, resulting, I'm afraid, in a very politicized process that I think it does only harm to the US system of government and justice, and hopefully it's something we'd never see here in the UK, God forbid.
Okay, we're going to come to an end, and I'm going to throw it very shortly. And I'm going to throw in a curveball, and I'm going to give you a second to think about it, which is, what's the best film? I'll let you have two, but no, you're not allowed to have The West Wing. You just know. I mean,
really? Oh,
no, you can't. But you can have another telly program if you like, provided it's not The West Wing. But before, so while you're thinking about your best film about American politics or elections or whatever, can I just say to everybody watching, thank you very much for coming along tonight to our first thing. We would love your feedback on this episode. We'd love your suggestions for future episodes, and the way to do that is to get in touch with Gabby. That's gabby.rap@chamber.co.com, uk.com, and as we sit and think about how we take this nascent format and try and make it what we wanted it to do, a place for people who fundamentally like books and like having fun and light-hearted and formative conversations about books, because that's what it's going to be. So Robert, TV program or film, preferably a film?
Well, I've just seen The Apprentice. It's just out. It was out last week. I did a review for it for Politico. I think you should go and see it. I think what it shows, I think, is the complete void that exists behind the front of Donald Trump. The really frightening thing is that there is nothing there but a black hole, and that's how he was described back in 1989 in Time magazine in a really perceptive article. And I think that it's that black hole, the void, the emptiness of this man.
I'm afraid the similarities with Boris Johnson are significant.
I would absolutely disagree with that.
That's a whole other episode, mate. That's
a completely different character and far from a void. Complex, but far from a void. Trump believes in nothing, knows nothing apart from his own self, of his own importance, and that is the most frightening thing of all.
I refer to my earlier remark.
right, Paula, come on, let's have a TV program or preferably a film.
I'm thinking Veep.
Oh yeah.
Sort of
we did have a question about how important were vice presidential candidates, and we don't have time to go there.
I can't think of a film off the top of my head. I'm not a great film watcher, if the truth be known. And it's a joke amongst my friends that I'm banned from every cinema in the land because I can't keep quiet. But I am writing a book, Liz, but it's about something entirely different. So I'd love to come on a podcast in the future and talk about it with you.
We can talk about that.
The title is It's Only a Vagina.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving swiftly on. And I'm thoroughly abusing my role as Jet. My film would be a very old black and white film called Inherit the Wind, starring Spencer Tracy, and it's about the Scopes monkey trial, and it's all about religion and politics, and all of us who are quite rightly worried sick about this Heritage Foundation, Christian nationalism stuff, which is being fueled by America, has been imported over here and the rest of the world, and very aggressive. It's not new. It's been around before. This Bible thumping politics has been there before, and it's been seen off before. And I strongly hope that it will be again. But it is, apart from anything else, just a great black and white movie with some cracking performances, not just from Spencer Tracy, but from the guy who was in Bewitched, Mr. Darren from Bewitched as well. So there you go. So thank you very much. Thank you to you two for being really game tonight, and thank you very much, everybody. Do send us in your suggestions, and I'm going off to find some of them books, and I hope you are too. Thanks.